Let's get to our reporters and analysts. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake is live in the Netherlands from the NATO summit. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons is in Erbil, Iraq. Also with us, retired Army Major John Spencer, executive director of the Urban Warfare Institute, and foreign policy editor-in-chief Ravi Agrawal. So thank you all for being with us. And I should note, Ravi's also there at The Hague. Garrett, the president really sounded angry this morning.
Yeah, Anna, he's been in a lather all morning, lashing out at Israel and Iran since he's been on the plane. He's taken aim at congressmen from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party alike over different issues. But really, I think this all stems from the kind of high wire act he's been engaged in over the last 24 hours or so, trying to first negotiate and then maintain this tenuous ceasefire between Iran and Israel. As best our reporting has indicated, the discussions about this ceasefire really started yesterday afternoon. Around the same time we were learning about Iran's counterattack, such as it was, on U.S. interests in the region. The president, according to my sources, Keir's sources and others, got the Qataris involved, essentially said to them, I can work on Israel if you can work on Iran. And by the evening hours, he was able to announce this ceasefire on Truth Social. Then came the matter of enforcing it. Since there was a little bit of time left between the announcement and when the ceasefire went into place, it became quite confusing over the course of the evening exactly when this was going into place, who had fired what when. The president this morning trying to tamp down Israel's response to a last-second Iranian strike, even calling Prime Minister Netanyahu from Air Force One to do so. For now, the ceasefire is holding again, Anna, but we'll be watching this closely all day long.
Keir, what more do we know about this call between Trump and Netanyahu on that end and Israel's decision to stand down?
Well, you know, Anna, given what President Trump has said in public, wouldn't you like to have been on that call between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu in private? What we do know is what the Israeli Prime Minister's office said after the call, and it's fascinating because the Prime Minister's office put out a statement that doesn't say until way down the statement that they are calling off these strikes. So it sort of gets into some justification. The ceasefire is set for 7 a.m., it says. At 3 a.m., Israel attacked with force in the heart of Tehran. It goes on to say, shortly before the ceasefire went into effect, Iran launched a barrage of missiles. Then it says at 7 a.m., the ceasefire went into effect. And then it says, and this is interesting, at 7:06 a.m., so 6 minutes after the ceasefire, Iran launched one missile into Israel territory, and at 10:25 a.m., two more missiles. So that's about 3.5 hours after the ceasefire, according to the Israelis. And it then says there were no casualties or damage. I think one of the things, and then I should say, Anna, finally in that statement, the statement says, following President Trump's conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israel refrained from further attacks. So they called the attacks off. I think Israel were very angry and upset by the hit on Beersheba, where a number of Israelis were killed. That happened before the end of the ceasefire, but I think that's one of the things that really shifted thinking until that call with President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Is it clear, Keir, that Iran, as the state of Iran, actually were responsible for that initial strike that was in question and whether it was in violation of the ceasefire?
Well, so much is not clear. I think we will find out. It's quite possible. I mean, I think what you heard President Trump saying there is that, you know, trying to silence your forces can be a challenge, and it can take some time. It's not unusual for there to be strikes after a ceasefire. One diplomat with knowledge of the talks tells me that, in fact, this is not, and this was before the call, said they were hoping this wouldn't be the collapse of the ceasefire, but would be instead just kind of both sides getting one more opportunity before it stopped. But it is fragile, and there's so much we haven't figured out here and hasn't been negotiated.
Yeah, Ravi, what does this moment tell us about the dynamic between Trump and Netanyahu?
Well, Trump is frustrated. I think he wants to be a peacemaker. He wants to be able to say that he has solved all of these conflicts around the world. And basically, in conflict after conflict, he's finding that things are much harder than you would imagine, at least than he would want it to be. So when we heard him sort of utter that expletive a few hours ago, I think that was a good sign that he's unable to necessarily have every side do exactly as he says. Now, as he's frustrated, I'm here at The Hague, where he's expected to arrive shortly. And it's very interesting that in Europe, the mood is very different. Of course, many European leaders have been calling for more diplomacy between Iran and Israel. They weren't happy that Israel began its attacks on Iran. They also made clear to distance themselves from the U.S. attack on the Iranian nuclear sites, even though they may be happy that Iran's nuclear ambitions have been set back. But most of all, here in Europe, as Trump is ready to arrive here, there's really a sense that leaders just don't want to get in his crosshairs. They want to make sure that Trump arrives and doesn't blow up the NATO summit here, where the key agreement that everyone is looking to is to get European countries to agree to spend 5% of their GDPs on defense spending. Get that agreement done, move on. Don't let Trump blow up the summit.
And so there was this literal blow up that we saw there with Trump. He was, expressing anger with Netanyahu. Then he fired off a couple tweets. Then he apparently had a phone call. Netanyahu then decided to follow Trump's lead. Are you surprised Netanyahu seems so receptive to Trump and his pressure on this, especially considering how apparently inflexible he's been there in Gaza?
I think those are two separate issues. I think on Gaza, Netanyahu has felt that by and large he can get away with it. Yes, the world is very polarized, but crucially, there hasn't been a dip in American support. And there's bipartisan support. So President Biden was also largely allowing Israel to go ahead with what it has been doing in Gaza, despite widespread global condemnation. So I think that's one set of issues. Iran is different. It could be that Netanyahu feels like he's gotten as much as he could out of this situation. He got America involved. They've effected as much damage to Iran's nuclear capacity as they could have. They need to let the dust settle now and see just exactly how much damage they've been able to cause, especially in Fordow, and of course, take it from there. But again, I mean, when you zoom out a little bit, with Trump being in the mood that he is right now, there are a lot of leaders here in Europe, where I am, who are very worried that same sort of feeling of frustration could be taken out on NATO allies here, which would be disastrous from a European perspective if Trump decides to pull out from the alliance, or if he makes any other announcements about a reduction in troop presence in Europe.
Yeah, Major, we've seen this volley, these sort of extra hits from both Iran and Israel, even after Trump's announcement last night of the ceasefire. Is it normal for this type of chaos and even conflicting information in the first hours of a ceasefire? What's to keep things from spiraling out of control? What is the key?
Hi, Anna. Absolutely, it's let's say, normal, that there is this timeline for ending wars or stopping basic conflicts. If you look back at the Korean War, the Yom Kippur War, Bosnia War, even 2014 with Gaza, it's usually a time for operations to wind down, pull troops back, pull aircraft out of the sky. And this is, I wouldn't say normal. I mean, I don't think the 6 salvos that Iran fired at Israel last night, one of those hitting just a completely civilian target, killing civilians, rightfully so. Israel is mad about that. But these are non-partisan positions for me. I mean, United States, with no loss of American life, no loss of American aircraft, assisted in achieving a limited goal in Iran, and then showed immense restraint when Iran attacked U.S. bases in Qatar, and then negotiated basically a ceasefire very rapidly. And of course, there's tension here, but we haven't even hit the 12-hour mark. I believe that the ceasefire will hold, and the United States was a big part of that.
Let me ask you a follow on that attack. We saw the retaliation from Iran launched towards the U.S. bases in Qatar. Gosh, it seems like so long ago. That would have been the lead story this morning, and here it's sort of on the back burner, it almost feels. Why do you think Iran chose that target, that response specifically, and even giving advance notice before launching those missiles at a U.S. base yesterday?
Yeah, there's a lot of pride, Anna, for the Islamic regime. I mean, what Israel has done to dominate their skies, the military targets they've taken out, and then the American military doing only what an American bomb could do to assist achieving a nonpartisan issue of non-nuclear proliferation, Iran had to do something. I think it might have chosen that one because of the communication, the defenses of that. All 14 missiles were knocked out of the sky. The base was pretty much emptied, but it was more, symbolic, that showing their people that they responded against the United States. From all senses, what we all want. We want the wars to end. We want strength shown, as in there are red lines that are red lines, like nuclear proliferation.